Hi and welcome to this video that's going to help you edit and proofread like a pro. So when you're working on your assignments, your essays, your dissertations, it's really important to understand that crucial role that editing and proofreading play in ensuring that your work that you submit is at the highest standard that you can provide. It can be tempting to rush through the editing and proofreading phase or miss it altogether, but when you do take time to review carefully your work, that can make all the difference to those important marks for your degree. Proofreading helps you refine your ideas, clarify your argument, and also ensure that your work is error and typo free. So it also helps demonstrate that you take your work seriously and that you're committed to presenting high quality work. So this video is going to provide you with a range of hints and tips on how to edit and proofread like a pro. Let's go. So we're going to look at editing first of all and then explore what proofreading is as well. So editing is really about seeing that big picture, and careful editing includes ensuring that you check the assignment question and all that the learning outcomes have been addressed. It's essential that you really do focus on those learning outcomes rather than going off on a tangent and addressing what you feel you would like to address, but actually you really do need to ensure that you stick to the learning outcomes that are being requested for you to look at, and if there's an assignment question, ensure that you've addressed that as well. So really keep your eye on the ball with regards to that. And make sure that you do check through and identify those areas when you are proofreading. So for example, what you might want to do is print your work off, or you might want to just use the coloured highlighters, for example, on Word, and just highlight. So for example, use one colour for learning outcome 1, for example. You might want to use another one for learning outcome 2, just to make sure that you have addressed those. There's some sort of technique to ensure that you have done that. Obviously make sure that you check against the marking criteria as well. So most assignments will be built up by a number of different areas of or criteria that will be marked against. So ensure that you understand that marking criteria. Sometimes it can be challenging to kind of get your head round to start with, but actually the more that you understand that, the more you can kind of critique your own work and ensure that you are addressing the marking criteria for that area that you are looking for in terms of marks. Editing also includes ensuring that you add, you might change, you might delete work, or you might reorganise the content. So this is these are big activities, and usually as a result of doing any of those, further work needs to be done, and then you end up by repeating the process again. So we've just looked at editing there, and now we're going to look at proofreading, and that's really about inspecting the finer details. So effective proofreading includes looking out for SPAG, so that's spelling, punctuation and grammar. You might want to use something like Grammarly. There's a free version to help you. You can use Word to check your work, but obviously it doesn't necessarily pick up everything that you're looking for. So for example, if you've misspelt a word but actually it's spelt correctly, if it was used in a different context, it's not going to pick it up. Common one for some of my students, write manger instead of manager. No idea why, but the spell check is not going to pick that up. So it is really important to look out and not just rely on spell checks or grammar checks as well, but make sure that those squiggly red lines, green lines or blue lines that might be hiding under some of the words or phrases in your work are addressed. Usually if you right click, they'll provide some ideas of how that could be changed, or of course you can ignore them if they're not relevant. Another thing that you would look out for proofreading includes referencing, so making sure that you are using the referencing conventions that are relevant to your own particular course. That in itself is usually quite a big task. It is usually recommended to do separately by just purely looking out for referencing placement. Have you ensured that you've used the right punctuation, and looking at reference lists at the end. And of course, final formatting. So making sure that you've formatted your work in the way that you have been requested to. For example, you might need to include contents pages, a cover page if it's a report, whereas an essay might be a little bit more simplistic, but making sure, for example, on all of your work that you're avoiding those contractions, that abbreviations are written in full, for example, before you abbreviate, and a minor detail like that, but that can really make a difference to those presentation and communication marks. So what I'm going to do now is provide some techniques that will help you edit and proofread effectively and efficiently. It's really important to maintain focus during the editing and proofreading stages, and really ensure that you do understand what the composition of your assignment needs to be well in advance. So some hints and techniques here then. It's really important to know the assignment requirements. Make sure that you read the question several times to ensure your work addresses the question, or if it's learning outcomes, make sure that you understand those learning outcomes. Make sure that you understand what those command words mean. So if you're being asked to analyse or evaluate, make sure that you understand what is actually being asked of you. We really encourage you to collaborate with your academic tutorials, so make sure that you have got them booked. Usually they're planned in advance, so make sure that you've got them booked and that you turn up with some work to review. Your lecturers will be able to provide, fantastic support and can really help you with the flow of the content as well as the actual content, and give you feedback if it's needed. But make sure that you take advantage of those. It's a lot more difficult to provide that support if you haven't got anything to show, even if it's only a plan to start with. Obviously, managing time is really important, so make sure that you do focus on the areas that matter the most and meet the requirements of the marking criteria. Make sure that you do set time aside, and that's not just as a one-off process, but make sure that you have time to also edit and proofread again after that first phase. You'll start to get used to the way that you work personally and how many times that you like to edit and proofread. If you're doing it the night before, it can really make it challenging, and you might not even be in the right headspace to effectively edit, change, amend your work, as you may do if you allowed yourself a few days before. But also, it's really important to know when to stop. It's quite easy to get so into your assignment and keep changing it, and you have to be able to think, well, actually, I've got so much else on. I've got family commitments, work commitments, etc. You need to know when to stop. There are a number of different proofreading techniques that you can undertake. I'm going to share with you some of those now. So printing work, whilst not necessarily great from an environmental perspective, but actually students often find printing their work out using highlighter pens, using a pencil, putting arrows all over the place to move things about can really help. You tend to find errors that you may not necessarily see on the screen. So printing work is a good technique if you've got access to printers or photocopiers to help you with that. Another strategy is to read your work out aloud. So often when you actually read out aloud your work, you'll also see whether or not there's errors, often grammatically, in terms of does this make sense. If you prefer, you can use the accessibility options on your own devices to read the work out aloud for you if you prefer. So that's always another option. Most devices these days have a read aloud function within their accessibility options. And save copies. So when you start editing, what we encourage you to do is save your first draft as perhaps V1, version 1, and then as you go to make edits on that or change material about on that particular copy, save that as a version 2. and then save it as a version 3. So as you've got your edits, and then you can compare and contrast from your original draft. You might find that actually after you've made the edits, you want to go back, and there is nothing worse than actually losing work that you have created that was really good in the first place. So save copies and use version control. Make sure you take a break. It's really important that you take breaks between you finishing your first draft and then be a day, a couple of days. It might mean if you're really up against it, you just need to go for a walk and remove yourself from the situation. It's really difficult to identify where you need to improve when your mind is set on what that might already look like already. So it's really important to just take a break, distance yourself, work on something else. And again, do it in stages. So there are lots of different things to look out for when you're, particularly when you're proofreading. And we encourage you to do that in stages. So for example, you might take time out to just proofread for SPAG, so spelling, punctuation and grammar, and then take time out, take a break, and then you might do it for referencing, for example, or you might do it for formatting. We've got a fantastic checklist that you can use to help you proofread, and we encourage you to use that. And when you actually look at the checklist, you'll see that there are a number of different areas to look out for, and it's impossible to do everything at once. So allow yourself time, do it in stages, take a break in between. So I hope you found this video of use and it's given you some ideas on how to effectively edit and proofread like a pro. Just remember that taking action today, taking on board some of the ideas that's been shared in this video can really make a difference for the big leaps of tomorrow. Believe in yourself and your ability to make that difference, and remember that every positive action that you take will make a difference. Thank you for listening.